All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's Thursday, July 14th, and we are so glad you're able to join us for this webinar, PhotoStory. My name is Aviva Crystal, and I'm the Community Engagement Associate here at NCJW's New York office. Today's webinar will be covering how you can use photos to raise up your advocacy work. I'll introduce the communications team in just a moment, but I'd like to cover a few housekeeping points before we begin. First, thanks to everyone for the feedback you gave us when registering for the webinar. Your responses were very helpful in guiding its creation. Please take note that during the presentation, you will be muted. However, along the way, we are going to have brief question and answer periods, and at the end, there's going to be a longer question and answer session. During these times, everyone will be unmuted, and questions will be in an open forum style, so please be aware of that. Feel free to speak up and make sure to say your name so that we know who's talking. Also, when Q&A is happening, we're going to minimize the presentation that you're seeing on your screen, so don't worry when you see that. We're going to have resources to send out after the webinar, in addition to the recording of this presentation. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. So now, before we dive in, it's my pleasure to introduce Debbie Dunn-Solomon, Director of Marketing and Communications, and Amanda Glickman, Marketing and Communications Associate. We're so pleased to have them share their photo wisdom with us today. Take it away, team.
So I'm going to start. This is Debbie Dunn-Solomon. Good afternoon, everybody. The first thing I'd like to say is to thank my colleague, Amanda Glickman, our Marketing and Communications Associate. She planned this webinar. She has made sure it's full of useful information and helpful tips. I also want to thank each and every one of you for the work that you're doing to create social change. It's the community service, it's the policy advocacy, it's the community leadership that you are doing in your community, and that's what makes you the National Council of Jewish Women. And what we're about here in our New York and DC offices is all about helping you mobilize more people and promoting your work. So obviously we are all interested in seeing our pictures in the media, on Facebook. I'm glad you've joined this webinar. I want to share one more thing, which is that to let you know you are already experts in choosing photos. And later on I'll explain how you're already experts in knowing how to reach out to the media. My point is that you know what's a picture that you forward on Facebook. What's a picture that stops you when you're looking at the news? Does that picture make you feel like you don't need to read the article because the picture told you what's going on? Or did it entice you into reading the article? Is it a picture that engages you because it's someone you know or it's someone you've never seen before? You actually already know how to pick a great picture. And what Amanda's going to do, I think, is show you basically how to create and the techniques for promoting those great pictures. But I want to reassure you that this is no secret, that if you think about it, you really know what's a great picture. So Amanda, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to reiterate how thankful I am that you all take time out of your day to really step it up with your communications. As Debbie said, I'm sure you all have such a grasp on what speaks to you. We just want to make sure that you can do everything that you want photo-wise in your communications for your section. I'm going to go to intro and main questions. We kind of covered why do we call this a photo story, and Debbie kind of summed it up. It's because we want to take a photo that's so good that it tells the story without even having text next to it. And then I always find it helpful before we do any sort of webinar, any sort of class or lecture, to think about main questions that we want to answer by the end of this webinar. The first being, how can we take the best photos for Facebook, Twitter, general section press, in terms of newspapers or your section websites? How can we take them technically? And then how can we use those technically awesome photos to function as a tool for our advocacy work? And we'll get more into what exactly that means. But those are the two questions to ponder, and hopefully we can clarify those as we go on. I also just want to say a quick note that we are going to cover a lot of very specific technical things in this webinar. And while each of those technical things like lighting or, press relations, those could be their own webinar, their own college course, really. So we're going to gloss over a few, mention some key resources that you need to know, but afterward, Aviva is going to circulate all of these resources that we're mentioning so that you can delve deeper into whichever ones interest you.
And not to mention that we're recording this and we're going to post this so that you can watch this webinar again as many times as you might desire, or share it with other people in your section.
Yes. So without further ado, hey, you may know these people. You may recognize these from your sites or for your Facebook pages. The communications team took the liberty of kind of doing a broad survey of all of our sections and their awesome Facebook pages and awesome websites. I know not all of you have Facebook pages, not all of you have websites, some of you have both. So we kind of looked around everywhere. And I just kind of want to really quickly, this is a first pass at what we see here. And this is all straight from section websites and section Facebook. So we have some things on the left, and then we have some things on the right. And each side has something in common. Our left side, we have stuff that we kind of could make so much better. While they're all, functioning for our advocacy work, they're not doing the best job that they could. And things on the right, they are hitting the mark for so many reasons, and I'll get into that. So we'll specify more, but we really think that stock photos and clip art, we could do so much better because we have people. We have real humans. We love real humans. You can also see this is a little fuzzy. We want to emphasize the importance of high resolution photos. We're going to get to resolution a little bit further on, but this is just an overview really quickly. And then these two have something in common. They're profile pictures of Facebook pages. And while cover photos are great, this has a pattern, this has a really colorful, awesome picture from an event, the profile pictures aren't sized the right way. So how will we know we're NCJW if we just see National or we see, CJ? And we'll talk about really simple tricks on how to resize those profile pictures and get them to their optimal size and design. Now, on the right, we love these pictures, and one of the main reasons is because it's humans doing real things, okay? We have this awesome little boy chowing down on a sandwich. He's not posing. He's adorable. Your eyes just to it. You have an emotional reaction to it. We have woman over here shopping, and it's action. It's fun. She's kind of caught by surprise. It's a candid. We love candid. Women over here holding NCJW signs, as well as women over here, I think Sarasota Manatee section, with their Traffic Teens project. Though they're posed, they are so well branded, it's NCJW right off the bat, and that's something we definitely want to emphasize. So if we are posing for a picture, make sure it's NCJW heavy. So our first takeaways from doing this survey of all these photos is, before we even get to the technical stuff, we want to make sure that if you have a Facebook page and you have a section website, make sure that photos from events that you have are featured on both so that you're up to date. We've seen some Facebook pages that are beautifully maintained. They have everything right up to the last weekend, but then the website doesn't feature, photos from that same time, or vice versa. And I want to make a quick point, and this is a whole other enchilada, but if you don't have a Facebook page for your section, you don't have Facebook albums for photos, you should make a Facebook page. It is so easy, so cool, and it's like the simplest way to really spread your section. Yes, and we have webinars about how exactly to do that, which we will circulate in our resources page that we send around. Really, really awesome stuff. So don't feel intimidated by Facebook pages if you don't have one. And if you do, make sure it's up to date with all the photos. And this is just touching briefly on dimensions. We're going to get way deeper into dimensions, but you should always take them into account. There are different dimensions that you should have in mind for each social media platform that you have. So as you saw, Facebook profile pictures have one dimension that you should keep in mind, while cover photos have another, Twitter has another. we'll get to it.
I'm just going to jump in and say I've already seen the preview of this webinar, and it's not all that complicated because Amanda's going to break it down for us into like 4 or 5 tips. Bottom line, what to do.
Definitely. Here are some more examples, and I just wanted to pull these because they all had something in common to me, and that was warmth. Warmth and humanity. Some of them are posed. You can see people looking at a camera, but the smiles are not like someone told them to smile. You know, we have this adorable little boy in a suit coat kind of scene. Marilyn Rifkin, she's not posing, but she's receptive. She's reacting to something. You know, women doing, you know, charity stuff at an event, and we love when people have genuine looks on their face. That's really what we take away. And, you know, more first takeaways, the best photos have action in them. And when we talk about lighting, clarity, eyes open, we will get to exactly how to achieve that. So, before you snap that photo, and I say iPhone photo because I want to talk about the merits of phone pictures. Before we even start, I'm going to say this is kind of a phone picture heavy webinar, and there's a reason for that. It's because everyone who has a smartphone has a camera that's as good of a quality as most digital cameras. Now, we're not talking DSLR, like nice Canon PowerShot cameras, but we assume that not many people own those. They're super expensive. They're not realistic to lug around to every single event. Your phone has an awesome camera, and we want to make sure you can use it to the best of your ability. Number one, a really cool thing you could do that I didn't even know you could do until very recently is that phones have levels on them. So you can actually go to settings and select photos and camera or any sort of camera option, depending on if you have a Droid or iPhone, and usually you can enable a grid feature. I'm not saying every single phone can do this, but the majority of phones have a grid feature. Once you do that, you can practice the rule of thirds in all of your photos. And that's this really cool theory that stems from math and art, where basically things that are most visually pleasing to us line up in thirds. So you can see it kind of in this example of this little girl on the beach. We have thirds that are broken up horizontally and thirds that are broken up vertically. And a lot of the lines in the photo line up with that grid. So we have the little girl kind of lined up with that rightmost line on the grid. We have the horizon in that middle area. And it really just, it's pleasing. And Minnesota section, I believe, did a really good job in this picture. You know, they have the sky in the topmost, their faces in the middle, and the signs are in every single third. So, you know, without even knowing, I don't know if someone was planning that or not, it worked out beautifully. Now, I think, Debbie, did you want to cover some of this?
Well, I just wanted to say that when you're planning an event and you're in charge, don't forget on the list of things to do that you want to plan for the photos that are going to come after, how you're going to use them, so that when you're talking about the event, and that when you're the chair, you really do not want to be the one who's also taking the pictures. It's a good idea. It's a way to get people involved, but, you know, assign someone in advance, know who's going to be taking the pictures. And then you want to think about what is the story of the picture, and we'll talk about that a little more. But think about as you set up the room, as you set up the place, as you put up your signs, where is the picture going to take place? And you can talk about that with the person who's going to be taking your pictures, and then you'll also be better prepared if any news photographers come.
And we'll talk more about news and press later. But some other things to keep in mind, even if it's just the day of the event, take stock of the lighting situation. And what I mean is, are there huge sconces on the wall if you're in a ballroom or a conference room? Are there really big windows that are letting in a ton of light? If so, it's a huge, huge con, basically, to have people posing in front of those sconces and those walls. It completely darkens the whole picture.
But unless you're particularly trying to create a portrait where you're just seeing the outline of the person, we've all seen those pictures, and that's exactly what causes that.
Right, right. And a lot of these events that we may or may not have are indoors, but if you can get outside, even if it's just at the very end or beginning, you will automatically have a clearer, you know, more dynamic photo, almost always. Also keep in mind, if you want a new cover photo for your Facebook and you're like, oh, this human trafficking event that we're having next weekend would be a really great thing to feature, maybe think about what would look great in a horizontal orientation. You know, cover photos are very long. And so if you have maybe a row of women with trafficked teens or something like that, that would be a really great photo to keep in mind to set up, you know, before the event ends. And really importantly, how will you brand these photos? And by branding, I mean anything that has NCJW. You know, different sections have different things, banners, signs, buttons, you know, step and repeat for our big events. Even as simple as, I know this is during Washington Institute, and we had printed out signs that had do your job and NCJW just on a regular printer, 8.5 by 11 paper. It makes a world of difference because it connects the faces to our organization. Now, I know Debbie definitely is awesome at touching upon what the story means.
Well, you know, I think it's important to think about the message, the meaning of the picture, the story that you're telling, the story of your leadership, of how you're relating to, whether it's speaking at a rally or whether you're interacting with a senator or your mayor, whether you're at town hall. When you think about membership, the picture is, I want to be with those women. I want to be one of those. They look like me. They look like they're doing things that I want to be doing. Policy issues, they're engaged in what interests me. And of course, how do you show a policy in a photo? Sometimes it's the signs, sometimes it's the people or the situation that you're with. But you want to think about that. How are you going to portray what you're doing? Your community service, again, it's how are you being active? How is it for your community? And of course, anything we can do to raise the funds to support the work that you're doing. You know, if you're going to be honoring someone, or if you're showing people what it is that we're doing, how we spend the money, because we put together this amazing back to school store, and we wanted to be able to supply kids with all these various items that we had to go out and find and get donated or purchased. So thinking about the themes that you want can be very helpful in how you set up your photo story.
And these are some really specific tips that I've kind of rounded up. There's a bunch of like psychological studies and ad company studies that round up what is most effective for nonprofits in general when it comes to their imagery. And the biggest thing that we want to emphasize, and it's kind of hard with this big giant group of women that we are, but individuals over crowds is huge. One or two or three subjects in a photo is so much easier to kind of visualize, and you have a more emotional reaction because it's an individual. It's easier to kind of pinpoint them as opposed to looking at a sea of faces. We also want to avoid inanimate objects or anything that's not a human, really. Maybe a cute dog. No, but you know, we're guilty of this in our headquarters office. We use the Senate building for a lot of stuff, and we would love to use humans in front of the Senate over just the building any day of the week. It just doesn't connect as much. And then candidates are always the best, and we have some really great strategies on how to get candidates. And diversity is just the most really great thing that we can do to move forward as an organization. If you can round up age diversity, race diversity, sexuality diversity, that is awesome. And we're not a fan of stock photos. We're not a fan of cartoons. If you got them, that's cool. But if you can replace them with humans, even better.
When they use them rarely, so
yes.
that then they really stand out.
Yes. And yeah, just to end on this note, humans love pictures of other humans, and we love faces. We register faces as the most visually pleasing thing from when we're babies on. It's in our DNA, as you can see in these awesome, compelling pictures
and
over here.
And these are authentic faces. These are authentic expressions. These are real people. You feel like you could be, you know, you could want to enter that conversation.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you both so much. We are actually going to open up the floor right now. We're going to unmute everyone. And like I said before, we're going to have this open forum style for questions. So if anybody has something they'd like to add, sounds like someone's playing some music. All right, and we'll take the first question, please.
And these would be questions about the things we've already spoken about.
And we'll have 2 more rounds.
And then we'll have 2 more rounds as we get into the more technical. Someone might have us on hold.
That's true. Who is on it? All right. Well, if someone would like to speak over them.
Yes, this is Rochelle Welsh. I have a question, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can. You have a soundtrack right now, but we're going to figure it out.
Okay, what are step and repeats? What does that refer to?
That's a great question. Step and repeat is, if you've ever seen some of these big Hollywood events, or we had one in Washington Institute, it's basically a giant piece of poster or paper that has a repetitive logo on it that people pose in front of. So they literally step and with a repetitive image. So if you see like photos from Washington Institute, you'll see people in front of a step and repeat that has NCJW all over it. So it's kind of just like a background.
Okay, and just one other comment about the phone cameras as opposed to, I mean, I have a relatively simple camera, easier to use, and the quality is better than the most phone cameras. I found that if you want to send a photo to a newspaper, they want the higher quality resolution than a phone camera.
That's an awesome point, and we're actually going to delve really deeply into sending photos to newspapers.
Okay.
And I just want to throw in, the reason it's called step and repeat is because it's the same way when you see, you know, the Oscars and at various events where a celebrity stands in front of the sign that names the sponsoring company or says the Oscars and then moves on out of the can. They take the next person, so it's step.
That's the way. Okay.
It's step and repeat. Take that picture. Take another picture.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That's great. Anyone else have another quick question before we get on into our second part of the presentation?
Hi, this is Christy in Minneapolis. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Christy.
Hi, guys. This is great. Thank you so much for putting this together. I just wanted to make a little bit of a comment as far as the stock photos and the cartoons. I totally agree with you, and I think that people do want to see human visuals, but sometimes I will post things just for kitschiness sake, for lack of a better word, like for example, for International Women's Day, which we kind of wanted to promote pretty big around here. I posted a GIF, I believe that's how you pronounce it, or how the kids pronounce it these days.
It's debatable.
Yeah, it's debatable, right? A GIF of Beyonce, and it was actually very well received. So
she's a real person.
She's a real person. We love GIFs. If you have GIFs of any kind, that's taking it to another level, and it's another presentation.
Now, by that we mean a GIF, right?
Yeah, a GIF, a GIF, a GIF. It's basically a moving image for people who are unfamiliar with the term.
Right. So I just want to say that comes across well sometimes in a situation like that.
It's that because you were judicious about it. It's because instead of falling back on always using stock photos, for example, if someone's setting up a website for you, you know, your goal is to replace that photo, the stock photo, with a real picture as soon as you can.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you so much. All right, so with that, we are going to remute everyone, and we are going to continue with part 2. All right. All right.
So you get to actually taking the photo, and let's assume you're on a phone, because most of us are. But this can also stand for any regular camera that has a shutter. You want to hold down the camera shutter if you want a really great way to take a lot of action photos. It's going to take up a lot of room on your phone for the time being, but it's so great to have a bunch of photos to go through instead of being like, oh, I wish I had more action photos. So all you have to do is go to this button. I'm pretty sure it's similar on Android and iPhone, and just press down, and you get a bunch of rapid shots. There's also a great way to fix your focus. You know, a lot of times you'll hold up your phone and everything's kind of blurry. You tap that screen, and it changes the focus. Sometimes it makes it more clear, sometimes a little less, but you play around with the focus before you take a picture. Now this is huge, and this was kind of new to me, but it's super true, is when you zoom into things, the resolution becomes more blurry. So a trick to keep really high resolution in your photos and keep clarity is physically move your body as close to the subject as possible for the best resolution instead of zooming in. You see wedding photographers doing this all the time when they get right up next to the bride and groom as they're doing their vows, and it really does work. So keep that in mind. And then some post-editing tips. A lot of times photos will be a little off, and before I use any filters that are built into my phone, you know, sometimes they have filters that are built in when you're on your photo library. If you can adjust the brightness and contrast just a little bit, usually always, I say usually always, if you just up the brightness a little bit and you up the contrast a little bit, photos will really pop. And usually there's a really easy way to do that on your phone camera. And then if you want to get fancy with it, you can download the VSCO app in the App Store. It's free, and it's kind of like Instagram, except it's not a social network kind of thing. It's just a tool, and it helps you edit photos in this really cool professional way, but it's very user-friendly, so consider the VSCO app. And I have been having a lot of fun in our offices making collages for our holidays, for our advocacy days. And if you're on a phone, you can do that through PicStitch, which is another free app. And I use Photor.com, which is something you can use on your desktop. And all you do is drag and drop photos, and it's super cute, as you can see. So this is where we get pretty technical. And after this, we're going to have some questions, so don't worry if it's a lot at once. Basically, what you need to know, pixels are used as the measure for photos online. For anything in communications, we say pixels. Sometimes photos are measured in inches, but for our sake, we use pixels. So don't worry about inches in this case. And it's abbreviated as PX. Pixels are literally defined as dots on a screen. So they're just all the dots that make up your computer screen. And now we talk about DPI. A few people asked about this in their questions on their survey, so I'm really happy to talk about it. And it's pretty simple. All you need to know about DPI is it's dots per inch, which means pixels per inch. Dots and pixels are the same thing. And for online, there's 72 dots per inch usually, because computers take 72 dots per inch. And for print purposes, there are more dots per inch, 300 dots per inch. And that is because printers require crisp, clean lines with littler dots. Oh, and over here, we have a newspaper picture. And presumably, this would be 300 DPI, dots per inch.
And of course, you see the action. The rabbi is conveniently standing in the right third.
Oh, yeah.
And he's not just sitting there.
I'm so sorry, guys. We're
getting dizzy.
We're getting reoriented. I'm so sorry. So sorry. We're back on primer on photo measurement. We're back at the rabbi. Go one screen forward. So these are, in my opinion, the only tricks that you really need to know if you want to be able to harness the power of DPI and of changing photo dimensions. I know someone asked about changing DPI for print. So basically taking a photo that's from a phone or a computer and making it from 72 DPI to 300 DPI for print, which would be a typical situation. And you can use Photoshop for this if you're Photoshop literate. And there's a bunch of tutorials on that. I have a really great link that we're going to give out later if you're a Photoshop person. But you can also just cheat and use this link, and it converts it for you. All you have to do is upload the files you want to convert, and it's very easy. In terms of changing a photo's dimensions, and we're going to talk more about specific dimensions in a little bit, it varies a little bit between Mac and PC, and I usually change my dimensions in Preview in Mac, but there's also a cheat website right here. And it makes it really easy for you. You literally just type in the dimensions you want, and it does it for you.
Resizes your image.
Resizes it for you. It's really good stuff. And I'm not going to go into this whole step because we'll be giving you this webinar shortly, but it's how you get a photo's dimensions in the first place. So you know what you're working with before you start converting. And I think we're actually going to pause again. I'm going to minimize. And yes, so let me just unmute you all, and we're going to have another round of questions for those of you who would like to ask about this last round of presentation.
Tech Talk.
Tech Talk with the comms team. Would anybody like to ask something? Wide open forum. What?
The hangers inside.
All right then. In that case, we'll keep going until we.
Two things or three?
Is there someone asking a question? No? All right. So then, in that case, we'll keep moving along. And you can all save questions for the end. Yeah, we'll have designated time for the end. So if you think of something right after we stopped, you know, keep it in mind, and we will answer it. Absolutely. All right. Okay. Our tricks. And again, we'll show you all of these at the end, and you'll get a copy. So this is really key. We're going to get into some specific Facebook and Twitter stuff. For Facebook, you know, this is a really simplified version of a Facebook page. And all you need to know is a cover dimension would be 828 by 315 pixels, px, remember. Our profile pictures should be perfect squares. 180 by 180, I would say, would be the smallest that they should be, but any sort of same number width and height is totally fine. And for a photo post, which is, you know, let's say Christy posted the GIF of Beyonce. Ideally, we would want any sort of photo or GIF post to be 1200 by 630, but really 1200 by anything, because Facebook will do the rest for you and adjust. But we want a really nice big width of 1200. And yeah. Now, continued, there are some really cool things you can do once you post a photo as, you know, a Facebook post. First of all, this is not a hard and fast rule, but it's a recommendation that the caption to go with the photo should be short. And by short, I mean really short, less than 80 characters. There have been a bunch of studies. There's a really great Fast Company study from a year ago that shows that 66% higher engagement is reached when there's less than 80 characters. And it's crazy. Hashtags are not important for Facebook unless we're talking about the name of a campaign, like the hashtag Do Your Job campaign. I'm sure you've never heard of it. Definitely have heard of it. But actual hashtags, they're more of a symbol on Facebook, but they don't really increase visibility or shareability or anything. Now, two cool things you can do with your posts. Let's say you have that awesome Beyonce GIF. If you wanted to keep it for the weekend, but you didn't want to be on Facebook or post on the weekend, instead of hitting publish when you've already uploaded, you can schedule it for a later time. And that's a great way to kind of spread out the wealth. If you want to feature an event one day each week, but you don't want to do it every day, you can just schedule a bunch of picture posts. Another really cool thing you can do that not a lot of people take advantage of is that once you have a really great post, you can click on the arrow in the upper right corner and select pin to top. And that means that post is going to be up on your page for as long as you have it pinned to the top. It's going to be the first thing people see. And you can keep posting other new posts, but this will always be at the top. And then you can unpin it in the same exact place when you want to not have it at the top. And we only have one page for Twitter because that's how simple it is to master photos in Twitter. And if you want to learn more about tweeting, we also, those social media webinars we talked about before in regards to making Facebook pages, there's also a ton of Twitter know-how there. So the Twitter photo stuff is very simple. You just have the similar dimension rules, but different numbers. And again, you'll be able to have these numbers in your hands after this.
And you're talking about the webinar that Aviva and our former colleague Rebecca did a few months ago. So they're specifically designed for NCJW members and leaders, and they're on our website, and you guys are going to give the links again in the materials that go at the end of this. So we're not just sending you off to some other webinar, it's an NCJW webinar.
Oh yeah, it's us specific. So again, there's different dimensions here. You want a square profile picture. Again, this time, keep it like 400 by 400, but it really doesn't matter. You could just do anything square. Header, it's really a 3-to-1 ratio, 1500 by 500, but anything 3-to-1 should be okay. Bigger the better, because it obviously is more clear. And then if you're tweeting a photo tweet, you just want a 2-to-1 ratio. So twice as wide as it is tall. And then this is another fact from that Fast Company survey that I really love. The most retweeted tweets are medium-length tweets. Even though there's only 140, you use 70 to 100 characters. And hashtag away, because Twitter is where you hashtag. So as many hashtags as you can fit. And then a little plug. If you haven't liked our Facebook page or followed us on Twitter, do so, because we want to like and retweet your own section accounts from our headquarters to really raise up your section work.
And that the same goes for all your members. You know, if you have hundreds of members, or if you have 1,000 members, your followers and those who like your Facebook page should be as close to that number as you can possibly get. So you want to be encouraging everyone to like your Facebook page so that your information about upcoming events and pictures of events that have already taken place will go to them immediately without waiting for an email or an e-newsletter.
Sure. And actually, this is not in here, but it just occurred to me, a note on tagging is whenever you can tag anything, whether it's, you know, on Twitter where you're saying at whoever, or whether it's on Facebook with an actual photo tag, when you tag people on Twitter and Facebook, it increases your reach. So tag as many people as you can. I know that's a practice we follow in this office as well. And it always means farther reach, always. Now I'm going to leave this to Debbie as our Director of Marketing and Communications. She has a lot of experience dealing with press.
Well, this isn't a press webinar, it's a media relations webinar, but it's something that a number of people raised questions about it. And of course, the whole idea of sometimes using the pictures to get in the press and to get to local papers, and even into your online, your patch, your local community papers and local blogs and online vehicles. So I have just 3 points. First of all, in terms of getting attention, I'm just going to say, be honest. Is the story that you want them to run, is the picture that you want them to run, one that you would read, one that you would look for? Is it like what you see already in the paper or the online publication or the e-newsletter that you look at? The second is that knowing whom to pitch, who to send your photo or your story idea to, is actually not such a big mystery. When you're reading an article and it's the kind of story, it's the kind of feature story, say about a children's event, and you say, boy, I wish there'd be a story like this about our back to school program. See who wrote it. Sometimes, often, I'd say about 50% of the time, at the end of the article, is contact information for that reporter. And if not, you can contact the publication, let's call it a newspaper, and you can find out how to get in touch with that person by email or Twitter or phone. And they'll be very flattered when you write that email, that note that says, I saw your story on, you know, the school program last March, and I was really impressed, and I thought you'd be interested in coming to our program this September. The fact that you know them, they may reply and say, well, I'm sorry, I can't make it then, or it's not my beat, or I'll send your idea on to our photo editor. But it's all about relationships and not considering the media to be hidden behind a screen. There really is a wizard, there really is a man behind that screen, or a woman, and you want to try to find out who they are and speak to them directly. And then I just wanted to say a couple of quick things about photo releases. So we all we think about privacy, and we also think about publicity. And we kind of, and it's become more confusing because people are taking pictures with their cell phones and posting them on their Facebook pages and sharing them with their friends. So one of the rules of thumb is that if you're having an event where someone could feel that they actually do not have the right of privacy, that they are in a public space, the way we took the pictures of the women marching towards the Capitol at Washington Institute, then it's not as necessary to worry about something like photo releases. But if there is an expectation of privacy, and particularly with children, so for example, with the back to school store, if you were to publicize a photo without considering it in advance of children and mothers, let's say, without permission, you don't really know, first of all, this big picture that perhaps, you invite a news photographer, helping children whose families are having trouble making ends meet. So you've just put that label on that family or those kids, and of course we want to, respect them and be wary of that. On the other hand, you know in advance that there are certain families perhaps who come every year, the kids who love to show off their outfits, or who are willing to talk about, what this means to them, and you can talk to them in advance. And we have a really great tip from St. Louis, the St. Louis Back to School store. What they do is when they when they register the kids as they come in, they ask the parent or the guardian whether they give permission for that child's picture to be featured. And if they say yes, it's no problem. The child gets a red name tag, and I believe, or a green name tag, and I believe they get a red name tag if they're not supposed to be photographed. So there are other tips, but just the idea of being aware of when you do want to ask someone's permission, even after you've taken the picture, you might want to go and talk to them before you post, a particular picture, particularly someone from the outside whom you're bringing into an event.
That's an awesome point. Yeah, and I think just really quickly, and we're not done yet, but this is a list of all the resources that we've used to kind of compile all these tips and tricks. And of course, we just scratched the surface, but we'll be giving you a list of all these links and what they are referring to and what they do. So I just wanted to put them out there.
And you're sending them, right?
We're sending them. Oh yeah. And
the email with the follow-up will probably be coming out sometime next week. But so keep an eye on your inboxes, and you'll get all these resources, the recording, and past webinars.
Yes, definitely. Okay. And yes, this is just one of my most recent favorite photos from NCJW, and a nice breathing moment. This is Rabbi Laurie Kaufman speaking in front of the U.S. Supreme Court about birth control access, and one of our DC colleagues, Amy. Everyone's just repping the cause. We have NCJW prominently featured, and Rabbi Laurie is super passionate, and it's just overall like one of my favorite photos. So we wanted to share. And then I think we wanted to open the floor up for more questions. I believe this is going to be our last set of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is the final open forum question session, and anything goes. Yes, so please feel free to ask away. You've all been unmuted. Again, this is our open question forum. Everybody's phone has been unmuted. So if you have a question, feel free to put out. Yes?
I also wanted to ask if anyone has a great tip that you were reminded of as we were speaking, some great success you had, or what turned out best for you in terms of getting a photo, or getting it sized or placed or anything else. Please share.
Hello?
Hi
Yes.
there.
Hi.
Hi,
Who's
this is Elizabeth Halberstam from Bergen County. You talked about the captions on Facebook and Twitter. Could you talk a little bit about captions for a newspaper?
Sure.
The most important thing is that you spell everyone's name correctly.
Yeah, you triple fact check.
I would suggest that you, some people explain Twitter as thinking of it as a headline. People say, how can I write something that's meaningful in 140 characters? And so it's often turned on backwards and said, well, think about it as a headline. So when you think about a photo caption, so first of all, I would recommend sending a headline if you're sending a photo and a caption to your local publication, to a media outlet. It can't hurt to give it a headline. They don't have to use it. And your caption, you want to include what is happening and who's there. And by that I mean that you want to identify that it's an NCJW event. You want to use as active verbs as you possibly can, and the least passive language that you can. And you want your caption to also tell a story. So instead of saying, I'll just try to make something up here, that recently 5 members were installed as officers of the National Council of Jewish Women, and they are left to right, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. And by the way, if you have a section that covers several different geographic areas, and you have a woman in the picture from suburb A and a woman in the picture from suburb B, then be sure you send the picture to the paper from suburb A and the picture from suburb B, and identify that these are women from that location. So you might want to turn it around. Was there a theme at the installation, for example? So you might say, new leaders looking to bring policy change to City Hall and to the State House and on to Washington, and then and then Sarah and Emily and whoever others' names, I'll look at the 3, Aviva and Amanda and Debbie, full names, have recently stepped up to take the lead of the National Council of Jewish Women section wherever. So again, the idea is to put as much of a story as you can into as few words as possible. Does that help?
Are there a particular length that a caption should be?
You should look at the publication and see what they use.
And then ask them. It's never hurts.
That's right. And you know that you don't have complete control. You don't know how they will edit or cut either a story or a caption, or change it. What you just don't want them to do is make it inaccurate. It depends, again, is how much. I would say if you can keep a caption to 2 sentences, that would be my rule of thumb.
Hi, this is Rochelle again.
Hi, Rochelle.
Yeah, how do you feel about using Photoshop to modify a photo? And I have 2 examples. One is maybe you take several shots of the same scene and someone's head is turned in one of the photos, so you take their head out of another photo and put it in instead. Or another use for it would be, very often I'm the one behind the camera, so I don't get in the picture, but maybe someone will take a second picture with me in it, and then I'll Photoshop myself into the scene. Do you see any ethical issues with that?
Oh, I think if it's just you and your members, I think it's completely fine ethically. I think it takes a very strong Photoshopper to really do those things without any sort of cues that you Photoshopped, because the whole key to Photoshopping is making it look like you didn't Photoshop. So I would say if it's completely seamless and you did an amazing job and you're like, yes, I can't even tell that I Photoshopped myself. If it's just you and your members, that's awesome that you can do that. That is amazing. I would say for anyone who's not a member, similar to the release things, it gets a little ethically hairy.
So I would also add that don't ever send a picture to the media that has been doctored in that way, because for them there would be very much an ethical issue. So you're not taking news photos. When a picture is portrayed as being news, then it has to be factual and accurate. But I would go back to Amanda's suggestion earlier about the collages.
Oh, yeah.
And so the way to do it is to create a collage of 2 or 3 pictures, and you can even augment that with, say, a picture of the centerpiece or a picture of a banner or, something else, the program that completes the picture.
Right, and if you are really, a Photoshop fan, which is awesome, You can do those collages in Photoshop as well. You don't have to use one of these apps or websites. But I would say, for your section use and for your Facebook page, if you want to put in a Photoshopped picture, I would say go for it. It's just, I think you would just be conscious of the fact that you should make it look as little Photoshopped as possible.
Yeah, but the other side of that also is, let's say you put yourself into the picture, and then the people who are in the picture. So does it become an inside joke that look, we put these two other people into the picture who weren't even there when we took that picture? As long as everybody, as people don't feel that they're being in any way manipulated or anything like that. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Very good answers. Great.
Thank you, Rochelle, and thank you, Elizabeth, for your previous question as well. Is there anyone else who has a question they'd like to ask of our comms team? We have a couple more minutes until the hour, so they are free to go, free to answer anything. If you all have any other additions that you'd like to make.
I'd also be interested to know if anybody would like to suggest topics for future webinars.
Has anybody sent a photo to the press recently, maybe? Or I know we asked these questions in the survey that you used to sign up for this webinar. But if anybody has any interesting exposure recently for their section or any activities that they've done, we'd be happy to hear about it.
Aviva, it's Christy again in Minneapolis. Do you have time?
Hi, Christy.
Hi, Christy. Hi.
Sure.
Well, okay, so I'm fairly new to the whole communications and public relations game, so to speak, and am learning as I go. But I know that in terms of, I would love to get more media coverage here, and I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, and this is where I'm looking for guidance, I feel like typical press releases are kind of out of date or not really being used anymore. Do you find there are different ways to reach the local media and get a hook in, so to speak?
So I would definitely suggest that you, if what you're talking about as the traditional press release, one of the things that is outdated is a press release that someone might write and assume is going to be printed as is. Although the other side of that coin is that unfortunately so many media outlets are cutting reporters and cutting staff that there are some of them that are just hungry and thirsty for copy to put in and fill the space. But still, the criteria for that is, if you look at the outlet, do they really run articles that promote a particular organization, that are all about the organization, or they're looking for stories the same way we talked about the stories of these pictures. And again, it's most important to notice what kinds of stories there are in the media that you're trying to get to pay attention to you, and who are the reporters who are doing those stories. Or even, in fact, if there's a big feature photo, on the top of your B section of the paper, and look and see, and it's just a big photo and a caption. Look and see the name of the photographer. You can pick a photographer to come to an event just as well as you can a reporter or an editor. And again, I wouldn't send anything dear editor. I would find out who the editor of the feature section or local news section or editorial section is before you send off your pitch, so to speak. And so when you think about a press release, if you're trying to invite them to come and cover something, then what you have to put very succinctly, almost like a photo caption, is what is the story that they will be able to share with their audience. That's the reason for them to come.
Okay. Yeah, I just think in general, I'm sorry, I probably should have posed. I appreciate the immediate answer, and that's actually very, very helpful. Thank you. And I don't know how the rest of the country and the rest of the affiliates do as far as this kind of thing. But certainly, if you're looking for suggestions on future webinars and things like that, I think some sort of basic media training of some sort might be helpful. Just a thought.
Great. Thanks for the idea. And Amanda,
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Christy. Great questions and great answers.
Yeah.
If anybody else has another question, I think we have time for one more. So you can just ask away if you'd like. And if not, then we will wrap things up. Again, thank you so much to our communications team for this webinar.
I'm just going to say I'm looking forward to getting more of your pictures so we can put them on the national website.
Yes.
Yes, and in the news, and yeah, we're really excited to see,
We love hearing about what you guys are up to. We love seeing what you guys are up to. So hopefully these tips and this lesson has helped you all. We're really pleased to share with you. And again, we're going to be sending out the resources that you saw earlier. We're going to be sending out the recording of this webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free. We have Amanda's contact information up there. Debbie's contact information is on the screen as well. And I'm Aviva Crystal. I sent out the information. You can always contact me for any questions you might have as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Be well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Her subject was I need. You let her have